Good morning, and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Princeton, where in our open and welcoming community, we live our message of hope, love, justice, and joy. Whether you've joined us here in Channing Hall or on Zoom or YouTube Live, it's wonderful to be together on this brand new day. We extend a special welcome to our visitors. If you haven't stopped by our newcomer table after the service, we'd love for you to do that so that we can get you any information that you'd like about our congregation. And we invite you to our next Exploring Unitarian Universalism program, which is today, right after worship at about 11:45, lasts about an hour, and it's in the Murray Room, which is on the other end of the building on this level. It's a casual introduction to our congregation and our faith, and we'd love to see you there. If you can't make that today, we do those once a month. So if you fill out a visitor card, you'll get emails about the next one that we'll have in February. And after worship today, we have a brunch. All are invited to stick around and enjoy delicious food prepared by members of our music ministry. Your contributions will support what they offer our congregation every week in worship and elsewhere, and you'll make friends and you'll have a good time. We thank our music ministry for hosting the brunch today, so stick around, enjoy some good food and some great fellowship. And now, friends, on this holy day, let us gather in peace and unity, as one before the grace and grandeur of life, as children before its great and loving mystery. In this hour, may we know anew the human joy of our lives growing together, so that this hour will imbue all those to come with that same sacred awareness. Come, let us worship together.
We clasp the hands of those that go before us and the hands of those who come after us. We enter the little circle of each other's arms and the larger circle of lovers whose hands are joined in a dance, and the larger circle of all creatures passing in and out of life who move also in a dance to a music so subtle and vast that no one hears it except in fragments.
Friends, as we enter this time, I invite us to meditate on Ralph Waldo Emerson's words from his essay, Circles. The eye is the first circle. The horizon which it forms is the second. And throughout nature, this primary figure is repeated without end. It is the highest emblem in the cipher of the world. St. Augustine described the nature of God as a circle whose center was everywhere and circumference nowhere. We are all our lifetime reading the copious sense of this burst of forms. One moral we have already deduced in considering the circular character of every human nature. Another analogy we shall now trace, that every action admits of being outdone. Our life is an apprenticeship to the truth, that around every circle, another can be drawn, that there is no end in nature, but every end is a beginning, that there is always another dawn risen on mid-noon, and under every deep, a lower deep opens. Holy Mystery, may we continue to recognize these circles anew as we further our pursuits of love and justice in a world where hate attempts to keep the new dawn from rising. Amen.
My dad, also named Joe, was 50 when he died in 1964. I was 20 and away at college. It was a real shock, and I was numb for a long, long time. After a few years, I came to regret that I hadn't spoken much with my dad about anything of substance. We, being Ohioans, seemed to focus our attention on the Reds, the Browns, and the Buckeyes. Though we went to church all the time, we never talked about our faith. He had some strongly held beliefs about communism and its effects on Hungary in the 50s, his parents' birthplace, but we never really talked about that either. In my early 30s, I signed up to do the S training. For those of you who are not familiar, this was a 2-weekend program that was designed to help people overcome mostly self-imposed barriers to fulfillment. It's now known as the Landmark Forum. I found it fascinating and useful, but the most compelling activity was the one that offered me the chance to have a conversation with my dad. Naturally, I was a little skeptical at the outset, what with him having been dead for 12 years or so. But soon enough, in a room with 200 other people, with me in my chair and my eyes closed, there he stood right in front of me. I started to talk about myself, of course, to let him know what I had accomplished, about my family and so on. He was a great listener. He asked about my mom and my brothers and sister. Not a word was spoken about the sports teams in Ohio. I was preoccupied with having him know that I had in fact graduated from college and that I had a job and went to work every day. Some of our next talks, we've kept at this, were about politics and religion and always about my family. Most of our chats are brief, cup of coffee type things, but very rewarding. I still regret that when he was alive, I wasn't more attentive to and interested in what he thought about things and what his life was like growing up. As good as our current chats are, I'm thinking the face-to-face real-life talks could have been even more fulfilling. I recommend cultivating a deeper interest in the ideas of your family and friends while they are alive. But if they have passed on, don't be discouraged or limited by that. You still have access to them, I promise.
Thank you. That was wonderful. Thank you. There was once a student who wished to have a picnic with their teacher. They were close, the teacher being a wise and personable spiritual leader, and the student being a promising acolyte who would soon surely lead in the same spirit. So after the student asked for a picnic, the teacher said, "Sure, that sounds nice. We'll do that one day. We'll have a picnic." One day passed and many more days passed. 5 years passed with no picnic. Eventually, the student and the teacher found themselves on a trip in the busy city. They were stuck in what appeared to be a traffic jam, and the teacher wondered aloud what was going on. They then realized that it was a funeral procession, not a traffic jam. And the student looked at the teacher and said, "They must be having that picnic." The student's teaching for the teacher being that one shouldn't wait to live as one wishes to live. One should live now, in the moment. Why wait for that picnic? We should have that picnic today. Now, one might read a little passive-aggressive shade into that vignette. It was shared by the great Buddhist monk Thich Nhat Hanh, as he wrote of life and death and all that comes in between the two, a frequent topic for him. He wrote about that all the time before he died exactly 1 year ago today, January 22nd, 2022, at the age of 95. He died in Vietnam, as was his wish, after spending his final years receiving treatment for a stroke that he had suffered in 2014, and visiting his monastery in France and continuing to teach as best he could as his health declined. Thich Nhat Hanh was easily one of the most influential Buddhists in the 20th and 21st centuries. His reach was worldwide and was propelled by peace activism, particularly around the war in Vietnam that bridged people, cultures, and traditions. Martin Luther King Jr., whom we celebrated last week, described him as an apostle of peace and nonviolence when he nominated him for a Nobel Peace Prize in 1967. King also said that he was privileged to call him a friend. Hanh engaged humanitarian and peace issues broadly throughout his life, never thoughtlessly, always with the mindful discipline of embodying and voicing the qualities and values he wished to see spread in the world. He did not use violence in word or deed to create peace. He did not frame others, even his enemies, as inhumane in this effort to build a worldwide sense of humanity. He probably wouldn't even call them enemies. He'd call them siblings. Even those who caused him to flee Vietnam during his peace activism there, for his life was in danger when he ran up against the authorities. He originally went to France, not for a vacation or for the food. He was a refugee. King called him at that time, this was in the late 60s, virtually homeless and stateless. For if he went back home, he would likely have been brutally imprisoned at best. For some time, Han was known as a proponent and teacher of mindfulness, of finding peace in every step, of enlivening daily this commitment to peace in everything that we do. Peace is not to be found at the mountaintop, it's to be practiced on the journey there. Peace is not to be found after the stressful day at work, it's to be practiced throughout those stressful periods. Peace is not to be found after one has fought through the surf to float effortlessly on the calm sea. It's to be found as the waves crash down on us while we're swimming. Even if the peace is just a glimpse of fresh air and sunshine, even if the peace is just in the pause between the crashes, even if it's just this breath, and then this one, and then this one, it's to be practiced and embraced. Peace is not to be sought, it's to be lived, breath by breath, step by step, and note by note. And his disciples read that as profound, his disciplines read as profound because of what he lived through. Death, threats, and forced dislocation, a sense of homelessness, persecution, and through it all, what seemed to me to be an ever deepening commitment to a peaceful way of living, both for its own internal virtue and for what it brings to life in our shared world. Living in peace keeps the war within at bay and lessens the warring tendencies that we share with one another. Again and again, he could have chosen otherwise. He could have replicated the words and deeds that threatened his life and hurt so many. His contribution to our shared world could have been to strengthen that which harms and destroys, but instead he chose, with mindfulness and discipline, to cultivate a more compassionate and peaceful way of being, moment after moment, day after day. And he would write about that and teach it and insist that it be a part of however his name and school and monastery were used. Peace beyond starts with peace within. This is a really difficult discipline to develop, but he would come to only speak of peace in that sort of relational sense. Or to put it another way, if you want to change the world, which many of us do, it's the activist call, let's change the world, let's rid this of that and that of this. If you want to change the world, you'll have to change yourself. You'll have to be more of what you want to experience more of in the world. It's not only that, the world does call for our direct engagement, but that engagement must be rooted in spiritual growth and discipline. This is where progressive spiritual activism tends to run a little shallow sometimes, when our activism is rooted in nothing deeper than a position page from a political group or a hot take post. These tend to be about changing others without reinforcing any kind of spiritual grounding or growth in ourselves. They lack the humility that a life of discipline can instill, and broadly, they end up distancing rather than connecting. They may sound well in small circles, but never really connect with whom we disagree because they're based in already contested conclusions. Or they do connect, but in ways that deepen the divisions and dissent. Whereas our faith, Unitarian Universalism, begins at a place of unity and love. We are one and we are one in love. And the one is everyone, as is the love of one and all. In Unitarianism, that oneness was originally of God and then extended to the oneness of life under creation. In Universalism, the love was a sacred love, so strong that it was within everyone and could guide everyone. It was a love from which we would never be separated. It was elemental in our minds and hearts, even during those times when we failed to live in an image of its beauty and harmony. It is the love that we affirm when we bless babies and remember people when they die. These beings are born in a love larger than them, but is present within them. And this one who passed away will be remembered in love by those of us who remain. And we too were born in love and will live in love in memory after we die. And that in our faith is for everyone, not just you-yous. Everyone is born in love, lives in love, and is held in love when they die. And our job as people of faith is to make that unity and love even more real, to bring it to more vibrant life, to assure neighbor and stranger of our unity and love, not just among ourselves, but among everyone. It's to tell the world this good news, even when we disagree, even when we feel disconnected, even when we are anxious, sad, sick, or tired, that we are one and we are one in love, and so is everyone else. This grounding theology, tradition is what can lead us to contest in the public square with the belief in the respect and dignity of everyone. It's what can, if practiced, guide us to love those with whom we disagree in a way that centers the love instead of the contest. It's what can ground our movements for justice in the soil of compassion, which only grows more compassion and more and more. And those fruits coming out of our engagement with injustice can nourish the world. Thich Nhat Hanh's faith was different. His grounding fundamental claims and traditions were not ours. He is not Unitarian Universalist, he was not. But the process is valuable for us when we see how his engaged Buddhism guided his peace and justice work in all of his life. It wasn't the other way around. He grounded his engagement and life in the strengths of his tradition, rather than making his tradition subservient to the political processes of his day. This grounding helped assure him and can help assure us that we are growing and changing as we seek to grow and change in the world. It can help liberal religion in general, not only proclaim to others how things must change, but lead us to change within as well. And then, knowing through practice that we are one, and one in love at birth and death, we can live in that spirit more fluidly in the space in between. Our lives can be more aligned with our values every day, as he would say, step by step and breath by breath. Unity and love can guide us not only here for this hour, but everywhere in larger life. And more moments can be those in which we find the beauty of life and not put it off to another time, another place. Or going back to the story, we can have the picnic now, today, not years from now at the funeral, for we'll certainly enjoy it more now together. I don't think that the student in the story was being passive aggressive or disrespectful. Rather, the student was teaching the teacher something that the teacher certainly taught. And Han was more teacher than student by this point in his life, so maybe he told it because he knew that learning to live in the peace of every moment possible between life and death is something that he himself constantly had to remember. Maybe he, like most teachers, taught what he continually yearned to learn. Living in the fullness of life in between birth and death is not a goal that is reached, but a practice that is enlivened every day in every way that we can. There's no degree at the end. There's no destination, no certification that tells you that you're living fully in alignment with your values. Because as soon as you realize you're having one of those moments, it's probably over. And so instead, it's more like living in this constant ebb and flow in which life pulls us away from ourselves and we center ourselves back in who we are. In this moment, we are one in unity and love. In this moment of anxiety, we are one in unity and love. In this moment of fear, we are one in unity and love. In this moment of being alone or lost, we are one in unity and our love. For in the voice of our faith, in our traditions, in our faith, in our beliefs, it's not I, it's we. We are one in unity and love. As a sports fan, I really want to assert right now that there's no I in Unitarian Universalism, but there's like 4 I's in Unitarian Universalism. So instead, I'll say that there are 2 U's. And our faith is about the other, which is also true. And there's also an S, so it's about us, which is also true, as long as the us includes the stranger, those who are not among us. The I's are all in between the first U and the only S, and so the us surrounds us and is always bigger than the I. That's some tortured reasoning. I appreciate that, thank you. That is some tortured reasoning, and it probably won't make a good slogan for our new UU Princeton t-shirt that we're trying to develop. You can see the newsletter if you have ideas about our new t-shirt. But something about it rings true. In spite of its twists and turns, we are of unity and love, not as one, but always as many. And in between birth and death, there is only blessing in living more aligned with those values. We'll be more peaceful. We'll be more confident with our voices and our presence. We'll be more resilient when life, political, professional, social, romantic, takes us on a turn, for we'll be grounded not only in who we really are, but who we are together. We'll be wiser than the hot takes that tempt us. We'll have more perspective than the op-eds allow. We'll be grounded in our greatest values and our shared faith, such that we can live in those spaces every moment and know that we have lived a full and good life, one that will bless beyond even the scope of all of our years. our gifts will live on, seems to have been on Thich Nhat Hanh's mind as he approached his death. He knew the end was coming years before it did, and so he could plan and write and make his wishes known. Being able to provide that isn't something that everyone has the opportunity to do, but when it can happen, it's always a real gift to those who are living on after us. And he wrote some words about his death. In them, he speaks of a stupa, which is a Buddhist shrine. And he wrote, I have a disciple in Vietnam who wants to build a stupa for my ashes when I die. He and others want to put a plaque with the words, "Here lies my beloved teacher." I told them not to waste the temple land. I suggested that if they still insist on building a stupa, they have the plaque say, "I am not in here." But in case people don't get it, they could add a second plaque, "I am not out there either." If people still don't understand, then you can write on the third and last plaque, "I may be found in your way of breathing and walking." In beloved memory, he wished to be present in the way he lived, in the peaceful meditations of breathing and walking that he learned and taught so that he could keep learning them. Through war and exile, he would breathe and walk. Through fear and danger, he would breathe and walk. In life and death, he would breathe and walk. And in our lives, we too may live as we wish to be remembered, living in unity and love, and sharing those gifts with neighbors and strangers, and developing whatever practices and disciplines deeper their presence in our lives. Maybe it is breathing and walking, or maybe it starts there and becomes something else. But whatever it is, may it remind you that you are never alone, that you're always one with larger life, and that you are loved both beyond everything you do or don't do. You are loved in a way that will never end. And your life, from birth to death, is more than worth every picnic you enjoy, every march that calls you forth, every smile that you share with a baby, every tender and frightened hand you hold. From birth to death and beyond, your life is a grace and a gift. May we hold them together as they open into a beautiful, unique expression of love and unity, into a wholeness that makes the world truly more whole. May it be so, and amen. Go forth grateful for the moments before you, the breath within you, the people among you, and the Spirit guiding you toward lives of love and kindness. And go forth knowing that you are held always and always with neighbor and stranger by that great love of no beginning and never ending. Go in peace, and amen.